Hello and welcome back to another episode of Veilguard Week. My name is Ewan, aka the Twisted Echo, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this series, which is getting us all ready for Dragon Age Veilguard, which is launching in 2 days. Can you believe it? It's launching on Thursday, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited. It is going to be an amazing experience, hopefully. I say that, but it's not out yet, so I don't know. Reviews seem pretty positive at the moment, so I'm excited. And hopefully, provided that the companies don't let me down, my game should be arriving for Thursday. So I'm hoping to stream it and play through it, and I cannot express my excitement enough. But that means that we do need to prepare for it, and that is what this series is for. And today's episode is going to be covering all of the other media that exist within the Dragon Age world. That is not the games, and is not the podcast, which was yesterday's episode. So we're going to be covering the books and the comics. We're going to be going into them, talking about key links to Veilguard, what the books and sort of stories are about, and kind of introducing you to key characters that may or may not show up in Veilguard. I don't know, but it is exciting. So this is going to be going through one by one. I'll go through it chronologically, and just make sure that we are as up to date as we can be. I'll also offer my thoughts on it as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the books, and the very first one we're going to starting with is The Stolen Throne. Dragon Age The Stolen Throne, which is written by David Gaider, and focuses on Marek and Loghain. Now this one we're going to kind of skim through, The Calling and Asunder, because they aren't overly relevant to the next game, the next title. Veilguard, there's not really going to be any links, unless they really do go back to the first few games. So this takes place before Origins and features King Marek and Loghain as they try and wrestle Ferelden from the Orlesians. It introduces Shale, and it's just all about what happens pre the Fifth Blight and how Marek and Alistair's bloodline came to be in power. It's a really good book. It's one of my favourites. Many people think it's not great. Some don't like the writing style. I really did. All the characters are great. Rowan, Loghain's amazing in this book. I really enjoyed getting to know him, and Marek I also really connected with. It's not overly linked to the other games, but it does provide a nice bit of history and cultural context into Ferelden, so it's great to read before you play Origins. And if you're playing Veilguard you haven't played the other games, it's a really great place to kind of get started while you're playing Veilguard, and then go back to Origins and play through it. But it does offer some insights to Alice's family and how we came to be in the Ferelden that we're in Origins. Following on from that, we have The Calling, which is also written by David Gaider, and once again continues to stick with Marek and Loghain. Loghain less, but this shows Fiona. She is in Inquisition, Duncan from Origins, and a collection of Grey Wardens as they go into the Deep Roads to try and uncover what's going on with the Architect and the Darkspawn. This is again pre-Blight, and is backstory. It shows how Fiona, who turns out to be Alistair's mum, and Marek came to be in a relationship despite hating each other. It introduces us again to the Architect, who is in Dragon Age Awakening, and his kind of plan, and how he inadvertently started the Fifth Blight, and with his quest to stop the Blight, how he can turn people into Darkspawn and stop the Calling. And it's a really interesting book going into the Darkspawn, and the Deep Roads bit does go on a bit. I'm not a huge fan of the Deep Roads. It's like the Fade sections. They're not my favourite, but it was definitely interesting, and it had a lot more links to the game, and providing a lot more of important context to how the Fifth Blight started, and giving us some key introductions to characters. And it still features Loghain, who swiftly became one of my favourite characters in all of Dragon Age media, and literally shows Alistair's birth, which is really cool. Whereas the Stolen Throne showed Kaelin's. So yeah, again, not going to focus too much on that just because it's not overly relevant. Then we go on to Asunder, which is written once more by David Gader and is his last book in the series. And this follows pre-Inquisition. It follows a Templar and a Mage. Reese is the Mage and Evangeline is the Templar, and it also introduces reintroduces Wynn, I should say, Shale, and we see Cole for the first time, and it really gives a backstory as to what he's like, how he came to be, and it gives you an introduction to Val Royeaux as well, the White Spire, the Mage conflict that is going on, and how the war happens after Dragon Age 2, and it really sets up Inquisition quite nicely, and gives you a really big insight into Cole, and I found that monumentally useful for replaying Inquisition and playing with that knowledge this time, and really getting to be like, that's why he's like that. And I came to really like the companion more, so kind of finding out how he kind of feels and how he exists, how he can choose how people see him, how he is scared, and he's a demon, but he's really interesting. And it's probably my favourite. I really didn't. That's a lie. It's not my favourite, but it was a really interesting book. You gained a lot from it. You learnt a lot about some of your favourite characters. Wynn is great in it. Shale is still really funny in it, and it just really takes you through the different parts of Orlesian society, and especially the Mage and Templar conflict that is so pivotal to the world, especially in Inquisition. So yeah, it's a really good book if you're interested in the Mage and Templar. It's Gader's best written by quite a long way. The characters are great, and Reese and Evangeline do show up in Cole's personal side quest mission, which is really cool. So yeah, lots of links there, but again, not really relevant to the overall Veilguard plot, but still 3 very good books. I really enjoyed them. I would give The Stolen Throne an 8 out of 10 for me, The Calling a 7 out of 10, and Asunder I would also give an 8, but it kind of takes a step forward. So they're all above average, and they're all really good reads. Worth reading if you're into Dragon Age, and if you come away from Veilguard, if it's your first time playing the game, you can come away and you can really kind of have a great reading experience and learn a bit more about Thedas and the lore behind it. Now we are going on to the Masked Empire, which focuses on Orlais and is the first book that I think will have links to Veilguard. Now, this is more related to Inquisition. It's political. If you like politics, you'll like this one. It focuses on the war between Empress Celine and Grand Duke Gaspard, which is obviously pivotal in the mission, in the politics missions in Dragon Age Inquisition, and it explores Orlais society, how the masks work, lots of different things, and you really get to know Celine, Gaspard, and Briala. Now, Briala is where it becomes important and links to Veilguard, because she has a real connection with the Illuvians. She overall takes control of them by the end of the book, and she has a direct link to Solus and the Dreadwolf, who used to be her master. And it's a really great link, and I will be very shocked if Briala doesn't come into Veilguard in some way. I know with the choices that isn't how they're kind of portraying it, but I just don't see how it's not, because she's so pivotal to the Illuvians. But even if she doesn't personally come into it, the Illuvians are still going to be a critical piece of Veilguard, because that's how you get around the crossroads. It introduces you to the crossroads as well and gives you backstory on how that works, and it shows mortals who aren't really understanding of the Fade and what the crossroads is, and kind of the elven history behind it, and it shows them experiencing the crossroads. It shows humans experiencing it and elves, and how that's different, because Illuvians are created by elves and their society. So it's a really great way to explore that, and really kind of get to grips with something that is going to be pivotal to this, and it also gives you a good kind of look into Solus and his view on elven culture and society, although you don't realise that till the end, but spoiler warning has already been given. This is a really great book. It's written by Patrick Weeks, who is a writer on the Dragon Age team still, and he helped with the podcast. He's helped with write Veilguard. So if you like the Dragon Age Veilguard writing, you want to know more, there's almost definitely going to be some links here. It is obviously more linked and tied to Inquisition because it's supposed to be a setup to the mission in Inquisition, which name is just blanking on me right now. I will put it in the Echo bot. Will let you know. But yeah, it's set up to that, but it will definitely have and play some part in providing you some background to the next part, which is great. So yeah, that is the Masked Empire. Then we are going on to The Last Flight by Leanne Merschel, and this is my favourite book. I should say for Masked Empire, I would rate that a 9. It is a step up. It's better written. It's a really great story, and it follows some key characters throughout and gives you a really important background. And it's links to the games, which I really enjoyed as well. And it's just a great standalone story. And you can really feel, and you see kind of the book play a role in the game, which is great. And it gives you better context into that mission, which I feel is sometimes lacking. And replaying that, having read that, I had a great time with it. So yeah. Now, The Last Flight. This surprisingly will play a... Well, this is the first book that has a guaranteed link to Veilguard. And that is The Griffins. But first, the book follows and tells the story of the Fourth Blight, with Garahol and Isaiah, and exploring how Garahel became the saviour of the Fourth Blight, sacrificing his life to kill the Archdemon, Archdemon at the head of the horde of Darkspawn within that Blight. But it also shows the story of Isaiah, and it's her story, and the role she played in really helping combat the Blight. She's a mage, so she's never really had much light shown on her, and she's got a hidden diary, and that's told through Valia, who's reading and learning about her, who's also an elf, so they're both elves, and she's an elven mage, and is really, you can feel the connection between these two characters, and I really liked it. It's the true story of the Fourth Blight, and it's a previously unexplored part of history in the Dragon Age sort of world, and you're going through whereas like Stolen Throne and Calling, you could read books about it, you could hear about it a little bit more. The Fourth Blight, as far as I know, was previously completely unexplored, besides like Garahel, who's been mentioned before. And I really, really loved this, and it was a really great telling. You got to see griffins. They're not extinct in this book, and you see how great they are being ridden, and how the Grey Wardens themselves push the griffins to extinction. And I think it's a really poignant and important story being told, and I really enjoyed reading about this. Now, the links is Davrin has a griffin companion called Asan, and guess where he got it from? The hatchlings that Isaiah hid away, because there was one good batch of griffin eggs left, and she hid it away because she didn't want the Grey Wardens of this time to use them and kill them. So she hid them away with magic, hoping that only those who are aware of the dangers of doing what they were doing to the griffins, which was basically doing what they do to Grey Wardens, so giving them Grey Warden Darkspawn blood, and that made them frantic and crazy, and would eventually they'd kill themselves. But it made them super strong, so for combating a blight, it was important. And so she was waiting for the blight to be over, so that there was still some griffins left over. There's 8, I believe, so we are going to see Asan and his siblings, and hopefully Valia in the game. And I love that so much. And it shows, Weishaupt. It gives you a little bit of information on that, and really kind of takes you through. So yes, if you want to read a book that shows how Asan came to be, this is the one for you. And this is a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. I thought the writing was great, the story was good. I still remember it now. I didn't have to do much of a refresh for this video. The characters are poignant, and I just really enjoyed it. And I said the Masked Empire is a 9. So yeah, Leanne Merschel, great job, really strong book. Okay, so these are the books. I really enjoyed reading them. They're a bit longer. Obviously, you have to sit down with a book and you have to read it. It's going to take you a few hours, but it really opens up Thedas to you. They can explore areas they just can't in a game. They can tell stories they can't in a game. They tend to move the books away from decisions you can make. They explore untold history. The only difference is obviously Wynne being alive and Shale, they can obviously die in Origins, so Asunder could not happen in that way, but they have their own canon, which the games have always done, and most of the time it's in things that are not going to be affected by your decisions, which I really appreciate, and that is different to the comics in most ways, and I really enjoyed that, and I had a great time reading these. I enjoyed the stories. I loved the characterization of like Logain, Celine, Gaspard, so characters that I'd met before, and I'm seeing them in a whole new light, hearing their stories, and I really love that. So yeah, I would recommend reading these if you become a Dragon Age fan. But known links, there is only one, and that is The Last Flight, but I definitely think there is things to come into play through the Masked Empire. The other three, Asunder, Calling, and Solemn Throne, as I said, I don't think are going to come in. Alright, well, the last book, if I can get it, is Tevinter Nights. Now, I didn't include this with the others because... sorry, this is a really battered copy. I read it on holiday. Now, I didn't include it with the others because it's a very different book. This is a very big collection of short stories, and it's its own beast. And this, I say Last Flight had the only guaranteed collection. This is written to be a prerequisite, not like essential, but will tell stories that are going to be told in the Veilguard. And we meet several companions who are confirmed, Emmerich and Lucanus. I believe Nev might be in it, but I can't remember that one, and I haven't gone through and read it again. I don't think Harding is. But it's a collection of short stories. I don't currently want to make the video, as I said, like an hour long, so I'm just going to kind of summarise. Emmerich's in it for a very short moment, as they tell the story of the Mortalasi, what they do, how they kind of care for the dead, and he's shown to be very intellectual. He knows his stuff. He's an expert, and I really enjoyed seeing his character, albeit briefly, and we do see Manfred as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed that short story. The Crows stories are the highlights for me. They're really good. Hearing about Crow culture, how the Talons work, which is the governance of the Crows, and there's 9, although that's been a bit worn down through one of the short stories, but they also play a role in the comics, so I think it's very likely we're going to see them in the games, which is great. I can't wait. They seem really interesting. And we see the state of the world, because this is set pretty far in advance to Inquisition, which the games are, and we see the state of Tevinter, which is currently being invaded by the Kunari. We see that Skyhold is now abandoned by the Inquisition. We're not there anymore. And we see some of our characters from the Inquisition, which is really cool. They get their own chapter, and they go back and they get rid of the demon that's inhabited the place. And that I loved. And there's just a lot. There's wardens, there's everything. And the final story is Solus pairing off with Inquisition agent Charter, who is actually in a lot of the media alongside Varric, so I think she's definitely going to be playing a role in the Inquisition, and quite a pivotal role. She was in Dragon Age Inquisition, and I think she'll be in Veilguard too. She's been in a lot of the different books or comics, which we'll talk about in a minute, and she's definitely proved to be a pivotal part of this organisation. And the book is great. It tells a lot of short stories. I'm not a real short story fan, but I still got a lot of enjoyment here. It's not my favourite, purely because of that. I think it does work for what it's trying to do, though, and I do feel a lot more confident in the setting. Characters are going to show up. I'm going to have a better understanding of how the factions work. I don't think the Shadow Dragons are mentioned. Lords of Fortune are. Crows, Mortalasi, Lords of... I've said that. I can't think of the other ones. Wardens, yeah. Almost every faction is mentioned, which is great. You explore all the locations that are going to be explored in the game, so there's a real lot there to soak up, and it covers a lot of the main issues of the Dreadwolf and the approach to that, and also Red Lyrium, and how that's going to go into the story, and how that's gone from being in Kirkwall, especially the Idol, to now playing a pivotal role, and Solus is interested in it, which we'll talk about in a minute. So overall, really good book. If you're a fan of short stories, want to know more, and this will definitely shine a light on lots of the information. So for this one, I would definitely give that probably... I'd give it an 8. But yeah, that's Tevinter Nights. Okay, so going on to the comics. We have 3 different books that you can get for the comics. You have the first 5 graphic novels here, and similar to Asunder and the Calling, the first 3 aren't really relevant to the wider story, and it follows kind of Isabella, Alistair, and Varric as they try and find Marek from the... I said Varric and not Marek. Very similar though. But yeah, it follows Isabella, Alistair, and Varric as they try and find Alistair's dad, Marek. Marek is actually confirmed to be alive instead of dead, and he's being kept alive by Red Lyrium, and has been trapped in the Fade. And the only other really pivotal piece of information is we find out that Sten is the Arashok of the Qunari, which is obviously varied on world state, but in official Dragon Age canon, or I guess Dark Horse's canon, Sten is the Arashok, which is really cool because I love Sten. A lot of people aren't his biggest fan, but yeah, he reappears here and gets on with Alistair and is an ally, so I found that really cool to see him again. But yes, Alistair does then kill Marek, so Marek isn't coming back, he isn't alive, he is now fully dead, but it shows kind of more of that character. And it was it was a good story. Saw more of Isabella, of Varric, and of Alistair, who is 3 of the best characters in Dragon Age, and we saw more of them. So overall, good first 3 stories. Not super relevant to Veilguard. I enjoyed it though. It was my first comic experience, fully from front to back, which is hard to believe. But yeah, I enjoyed that. Worth a read. I'm not going to rate the comics just because I think that's very difficult. Based on what they are. The art style is beautiful for all of them though, so I'll give it's kind of in the 6 to 7 range, I think, but yeah, it's an interesting one and it explores greater Thedas lore. Then we have Mage Killer, which follows and introduces Marius and Tessa, who I was sure Marius was going to be a companion. He isn't, but I think he will definitely show up. As they hunt for Venatori, it reintroduces to Calpurnia, who is the Venatori leader in Inquisition, and she is in a romance with Marius, which I thought was interesting, and it shows this duo joining the Inquisition. Dorian is introduced here. We see Leliana and we see Charter. Charter is in a relationship with Tessa, so I believe that both of them are likely to appear in some way in Veilguard as agents of the Inquisition, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then finally, the final one of the 5, we are with Knight Errant, where we meet Squire Vaya and Sir Aaron Hawthorne as they attend Kirkwall to see the appointment of Varric, and then they are tasked with Vaya helping as she's a thief, and Sir Aaron Hawthorne doesn't know that, but they are tasked with rescuing Tessa and Marius from jail, which happens to be in Starkhaven with Sebastian Vale, who is the DLC companion from Dragon Age 2. So there's a nice link there, and Tessa and Marius from the previous comic, Mage Killer, were tasked with stealing Red Lyrium notes from Sebastian. Why he has that, I don't know. But yeah, the Venatori are also interested in this, and so there's a conflict there. But eventually, all 4 of them get out. They have the notes, and Vaya joins the Inquisition, and Sir Aaron Hawthorne agrees to join them. And that leads us very nicely into the final comics. That's a lie. Almost the final comics in Wraiths of Devinter. Very nice hardcover. Really like this, and this is my favourite of the comics. I really enjoyed these 3. This one I did reread because I think it's the best ones, I also think it will be quite relevant. So this also gives us some backdrop on Tevinter, which is being currently invaded by the Qunari, as I said earlier, and it sees Vaya, Marius, Aaron, Tessa, and Dorian joined together in the first one, which is Deception, as they learn about a Red Lyrium weapon that has been taken from Kirkwall, and they begin their hunt from it. Yeah, we are reintroduced to Fenris, who is my favourite companion, or one of them, from Dragon Age 2, and he helps them in the hunt. And the weapon that was missing from Kirkwall has turned out to be a sarcophagus that can infuse elves with lyrium, much like Fenris, and they're using that with Red Lyrium. So they hunt this all down, and they discover it's a ritual through a weapon, and there is a Red Lyrium weapon that each sort of test subject has, that if they're separated, then they can be killed, which is useful information for the games, which I'm almost certain this is going to come up in some way. Aaron does die from this, and Veya believes she needs to take his remains back to Ferelden, but I believe she'll be back in the Veilguard, as she's still part of the Inquisition, and the Lyrium idol is with the Venatori right now, and Solus does know this, as the final part of this comic shows Solus watching. So to conclude, The Wraiths of Tevinter was a really good book. I really enjoyed it, or comic selection, and it talked to us about kind of Red Lyrium, how the elves are going to be impacted, and kind of how the Venatori are focusing on creating weaponry from Red Lyrium, and that Solus has a vested interest in it. And that was reinforced by Tevinter Knights. And I think a lot of these characters are going to show up in Veilguard. I could be very wrong. I think Marius is definitely going to show up. Dorian, Fenris, Veya. Aaron's obviously sadly gone now, but Tessa as well. I think we will see them, or at least a reference to them, throughout the game, which is good, because obviously there's no decisions there, so they can just show up. Obviously Dorian and Fenris are very different, but the fact that they are featured so prominently, it really wouldn't make sense not to include them. So that does take us to our final book, Dragon Age: The Missing. This is a comic that leads directly into the Veilguard. It is about Varric and Harding finding Solus and going on a journey to do so. It gives us a look into the different factions. We see the Veil Jumpers, we see Crows, we see the repeat Crows, so the 5th and the 7th Talon have been prominently within multiple pieces of media, so I think it's very likely that they're going to show up. Their story in Tevinter Knights is also my favourite, and yeah, so they reappear here. We see, as I said, Arlathan Forest, we see Minrathous, and we also get a real proper introduction to Nev, and we start to see Solus's plan, his sympathy for the elves, and how that's playing out in Minrathous and Tevinter, where slaves are obviously still a thing. And how the Venatori are still a big part of this, and with Calpurnia alive, as shown in the previous comics, I think they're going to continue to, play a prominent role, which is good, because that's a direct link. I do think this is a pretty weak comic. I didn't love the writing. I thought it was pretty disappointing, and then it does end with kind of a focus on Rook, and it's Varric being like, I know someone who is just the right fit for this. And that is our Rook, whoever that may be. So it's not overly detailed, as you can see. It's only quite a small comic, as most comics are. It's beautifully illustrated. You can kind of see it here. And I really enjoyed kind of getting to see it. And you see a lot of different locations, and I felt like I had a better understanding of where we're going in the game. Arlathan Forest is really cool, and how it's really topsy-turvy. And the Veil Jumpers, and I think they're going to come into this game, the ones that were in The Missing. So it's a really worth it read if you can. I wouldn't get the physical edition if you're not like a die-hard Dragon Age fan. I'd just get it online, have a look at it, and kind of give it a read. It does give some pre-context, because it is literally, I think, probably the day or days before Varric and Harding find Rook. So I think it's definitely worth a read. But yeah, there's not much more other than that goes into it. It's surprisingly not many links besides just a few characters who I think are showing up. So overall, I think it's not my favourite. My favourite comics are definitely Wraiths of Tevinter, and that hardcover, I think it's great. The other 6, are fine, but I'm not in an overall rush to read them again. So that does take us through all of the different media. I hope this has been useful, kind of giving you a reminder of some of the plots that have been explored, or kind of shone the light on that, the links between this and Veilguard, and where these games are going next. If you did enjoy this video or have any further questions, please put them in the comments. Please say in the comments, and I will make sure to try and answer your questions, expand on some characters, expand on some points. Again, wanted to really try and focus on getting this a bit shorter than normal videos. I don't know if I've been successful, but we will find out. And if you want to see the rest of the Veilguard Week episodes, which tomorrow's is focusing on the story of Veilguard and what that needs to do to personally satisfy me and what I think will help make it a good story, then make sure you hit subscribe. And if you did really enjoy this video, please like and share it with your friends, because any exposure really helps a small YouTuber like me. But as we continue to get ready for Veilguard, please share your thoughts, share your excitement, and I look forward to interacting with you soon. See you tomorrow for some more Veilguard. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.